Hello, everyone. We are group 4. And we are doing the areas 1 and 6. So this is area 1, where we have many different zones with different typologies inside. We will look at through that more detailed. And this is area 6, which we actually took a little more in-depth look at, which is actually a little more monofunctional. But yeah. So what we have is in area 1, we have a special district with Abwasseranlage, this clean water treatment plant with hobby gardens and with housing that is a little more dense. Here, a single-family housing, and then again sport facilities and headquarters of the water treatment association in Zurich. In area 6, we have a limited commercial and housing zone. And then in the middle, we have a rather homogeneous middle dense housing, single-family housing, and the sports facilities on the top.
Yeah, we figured out kind of 8 different typologies. Generally, we would say like T4, T5, and special districts. The special district, the allotment gardens, the sport areas. Then lower density, kind of this. I can go through. But you see kind of the difference of the scale. This is this Tiefenwiese structure. This really small gardens. Yeah, here the single-family houses. You have 2 different types. One is this double houses and one-family houses, like you see it here. And because it's also on the hillside, it's really you have many variations how they look like. Sometimes just 1 story or 2 story. And next to it you have this row blocks from 3 to 4 stories, and also in really different kinds, 3 rows or just 2, or also in different angles. Mm-hmm. Yeah, here you have first view, that's the single-family houses. Huh? No. And here is
which one was this? Like 2 of them. Okay, yeah, I didn't know. Can you go back? I mean, it's not the detail, but to show, like the predominant typology here in this area is actually this, which is it's very interesting because it's like these social housings, and there is no lots, so they're just like floating in the middle of the space, and they almost look the same. It's a little freaky, but just wanted to.
When you get nearer to the Lindenplatz, to the Badnerstraße, the density gets higher, and here we have there's kind of something between. It's 3 to 4 stories. It's a really facade, and here to the Badnerstraße, then 4 to 5 stories, and also the uses. There are also shops in the seat kind of here, so the functions get kind of more public. It's also the whole area 6 is kind of orientated to this Badnerstraße. There's kind of no service in the area itself, so all is going down to the Badnerstraße. Yeah.
Yes, and we have another typologies here with the facade with a lot of balconies. and so it's around these areas, and we applied it on this model. Maybe next.
These are then the zone 1, with the large scale, and then there you have a kind of this towers, living towers. There are 3 different types of it, and finally this huge structure, the Typhenwies, which is kind of a structure closed in itself. With this park, and here you have also how you say that? Seniorenheim. School, kindergarten, everything is kind of one huge structure.
Yeah. These are more in the area 1. The previous ones were in area 6. Yeah. Yes.
And this is the place with the commercial functions, and there is with the continuity facades, and on the upper floors and in the lower floors there are the shops, and to the for the commercial uses.
Yeah, the last one, the special districts, development gardens and the sport areas. And yeah, here always is located at one corner, kind of the sports center, and from there you have these huge areas you go into. It's the different services. Yeah, that's the first view. This is the other one, that's the sport area of the area 6, kind of next to the forest, on the top of the hill. And when we went there also, it was on a Saturday once, and there was really all the people are going there, so it's really kind of changing the uses during the weekdays.
Yeah, we could render this one yesterday with development gardens. They look a little more like, but they're really cute. That are found in area 1 actually. So I can shortly again summarize so that you don't get mixed up. So this is area 6, where we have close to the main street the commercial typologies and the denser housing with some actually more recent housing, and then in the middle to the back is if we go back to the forest, it gets a little less dense at these areas. And then we have the single-family housing and this social housing close to here. And then we have the sports center, and then in the end we have the forest. So there's kind of gradual change of densification as we can see this. And I think we find this kind of very nice because it's a gradual shift, and it seems to have this kind of really haven where like really small housing, where you have actually a multifunctional center here, which somehow is easier to access, which actually works. So yeah, it's a comment on this place.
From my side, maybe I would wish kind of some commercial services more near here on the top of the hill. I don't know how it is, but you really take your stuff here and go home, and there's kind of no connection, collective feeling up here. So also, like you see, you get kind of this islands. It's really nice and green, and they're also really near to the forest and everything, but you don't get kind of this urban feeling. It's kind of already periphery. So
yeah. But even with periphery, it could be like a little kind of tiny center with rocks and so on. So this was one of the things that I recognized when I first came to Zurich, that a lot of things is like really it's really dead on the weekends, instead of kids are playing outside and stuff like that. I mean, even if the opportunities are there. So you have been in these areas for several times, and could you get some insight why is it like that? Is it people are more directed to indoor living and just not used to use the exterior, or what could an architect deliver to them that they
I mean,
more accept the environment and not just place like a shoebox where they just go inside, eat, sleep, work.
I think, I mean, especially in this area, like we were there always at the weekend, and in this area, for example, there's a lot of people doing gardening.
Okay.
So it's a little more like a community. Actually, it's also visible from the plan. I think it's a little more enclosed, and this area on the top is already a little more alive because there's downstairs always commercial activity, and here it's like this kind of newly built housing typologies where, for example, they're a little more inward, turned inward, especially in this middle area. So, I mean, what is about this dead being dead? I think is somehow the character of the place at the same time. I think, for example, they prefer to be here, especially because they're kind of a little more disconnected from the city. So, just yeah, but. Maybe especially where the sports center is and where this kind of school area is, like two of them, there you might actually need some sort of commercial activity because people come there for certain events, and then they could actually really liven up the area. But this is a potential. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, sorry to interrupt you, but if you're thinking on that a lot of strategies go that you have at least a densification factor of 2 or 3.
Yeah.
In certain areas here in Zurich right now, if you rebuild or restructure, remodel community housings and so on, so I mean, if you already recognize that in the last 20 years, the newest buildings, there is actually no social activities, and if some I don't hope so, but some economic changes happens, it could be a problem then.
I think especially the newest ones that are built in the middle, they are kind of problematic, because they're built for a certain income, I think, and then they have this kind of interior. So, for example, like you said, if the occupants change, it might dramatically change the areas at the same time. Yeah.
And I think also a possibility to activate would be, for example, here it's really kind of this space green. There's happening nothing. It's just grass, and it kind of activates through, I don't know, playing areas or something. But there's just grass. And if you could activate kind of this zone, I think you also could connect different kind of these islands, bring them together. It's also the question if you like that, bringing your quarter together in your kind of neighborhood.
Yeah. So what would be your 2-point or 5-point plan?
Yeah.
So that's some rest.
Just because we have another area, sorry, it just didn't go. So, yeah, I think we can look at this from the relative survey because it's already on, right? Yeah. Because we didn't render this area, but I think here.
You just need to enlarge the screen, then you have more fun.
Okay.
And actually,
Can we zoom into this area?
you can zoom in as well. Just take that symbol.
No, it's not turnabout. It's just single touch at the moment.
Do you want to zoom in?
Yeah, just. So zoom out.
Zoom out is just mouse. You can't do this with this software.
I know.
I mean, the hardware can, but.
But we're looking forward to have new programmers. So if you want to make another STS elective to write a Silverlight application, you can do.
This is the area 1, and you can see here this is the area for the garden house, and here that's it for the industrial buildings, and here is the headquarters sites. And we think that in these highways will separate.
You can touch it. You have to touch it. I don't want to interrupt you.
Okay. Yeah, and you can see here these highways and the Bahnhof, the tramway stations will insulate these areas to the Altstatten. And for us, I think we can have some strategies to soften the edge. I think some, for example, the Garden House is a good examples because people would go there and it's not as a forgotten areas. And I think, for example, here it's just grass and nobody uses it. It's really dead, and also it separates from this huge band here. And yes.
Yeah.
I think here also the big problem is, like you already said, this big infrastructure, but combined to this Europa bridge, kind of the traffic is also dividing through this street. So the traffic is going into the quarters and again building these islands, like this one, this one, this one.
Yeah. If you maybe go.
Try for one here. Or
Yeah. Go. Okay. So yeah, I think it's a little more obvious here, the islands. There you can see that here, especially if you zoom into this area, we have this kind of very open space with like the single-family housing here and the sports center, and yeah, and then we suddenly have this break, and then we have a social housing where we dance. Yeah, this different reason, and with its kind of interior functions. Yeah, thank you. And then we have some new interventions here, especially here, where they have this kind of Migros downstairs with some sort of commercial function, and then yeah. No, you can't see the Migros, but but it's somewhere here, I think. Yeah. Then suddenly we have a break, and then we have this kind of hobby gardens, allotment gardens. So I think this area is more problematic than the area 6, area 1, because it's somehow quite detached from each other, and it was somehow fun to walk around and enjoy the area, whereas this one was a little less enjoyable. We have some problem with the trees. So. Yes.
Too much trees.
Yeah, and they're not. The texture is not there. Ian enjoyed doing this, I think. Yeah. Well, with this area, I think it's really important to connect the functions, or somehow create this kind of master plan, probably, which doesn't somehow obviously doesn't exist, or exists but doesn't work because they are completely detached from each other. It's a very suburban, actually, master planning, which doesn't. And with the fact that there's a highway and it's already detached from the city, it's more. Yeah. It's harder to connect this area to the rest of the place. I have no idea.
It's very sensitive.
Yeah. This is the area.
Okay.
Back to area 6.
Okay. Great. So we have a nice comparison.
Yeah.
Okay. So how hard was it to get the model into the reality server so far?
We have to ask Lucas about this.
Okay. But I need to say, the new City Engine version, which is released right now, they have better connection to the
Yeah. I mean, once we picked all the layers and added the rule files, I just exported it, and then it was here suddenly.
Surprise.
Surprise.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.